Caution! The AJ and Quill show contains D&D content and is intended for a D&D audience. And, besides that, they're really weird. Hi everyone, welcome to Meta Adjacent, Player University, and your stop for Monster Tactics in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'm Professor AJ, and with me as always is my fearless companion, Quill the Dragon. Say hi, Quill.
Greetings, puny humans. Prepare to absorb the knowledge Quill will dispense with his mighty jaws.
Now, we've been covering a series that are highlighting all the monsters and creatures you can encounter inside the new adventure, The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, released from Dungeons & Dragons.
With the adventure actually out now, we're excited to be able to play it with our players.
And as a special treat, the designers put in a whole bunch of characters from the 1980s toy series and cartoon line. Well, that bell means that class has started. Pull out your notebooks and let's get going. Now, inside The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, the journey for the safe return of your treasured possession has led you back to the Witchlight Carnival. A spectacular event of games and music and food and friendship. However, strange things are afoot, and it's up to you to find out what they are and who's behind them.
Along the way, you're going to encounter some classic, nostalgic characters from the 1980s toy line and cartoon series. So out of nostalgia and pure awesomeness, we've decided to cover those characters for the next few weeks.
But let's not waste any more time.
So, what are we covering today?
Today, we're covering the righteous Strongheart. But let's see what the book actually has to say about this character. For Strongheart. Strongheart is a fearless seeker of justice, risking his life to ensure that good triumphs over evil. He is thoughtful, kind, and seldom rash. Yet, he never hesitates to punish those who spit in the face of law and order. Strongheart doesn't worship a god, but devotes himself to an ideal, that the world can be spared from evil by those who have enough courage to stand against it. For alignment, he's lawful good. Personality trait. I try to see the good in people, but I won't give comfort to those who have no goodness in them. For his ideal, justice needs champions. I count myself as one. For his bond, Valor's call is not just an assembly of like-minded individuals who believe that good must triumph over evil. Its members are also my friends. And for his flaw, I am prepared, although my friends might say that I'm too prepared, to sacrifice myself for the greatest good. Now, Strongheart is your classic good hero paladin guy. He's a CR for medium human paladin, and his alignment is lawful good. He has an AC of 20 wearing plate armor and a shield. He has 10d8 hit dice and a walking speed of 30 feet. For saving throws, he has proficiency in wisdom and charisma. For skills, he's proficient in insight and persuasion. He's immune to the frightened condition,
which is pretty standard for paladins.
Under special equipment, he wields his iconic longsword named Steel. Now, Steel is a lawful good, sentient longsword.
And while wielding the sword, Strongheart is able to cast the Revivify spell once per day.
Now, he's a paladin, so like most paladins, he has spell casting, he has a multi-attack, and as a reaction, he can protect another.
And this just means he can use his reaction to impose disadvantage on an attack roll against an ally.
That's super cool. I love seeing these classic 1980s toy and cartoon series characters brought back.
Although this isn't the first time these characters have been reimagined inside Dungeons & Dragons.
And while the book does have some great information, let's see what the book isn't telling you. Now, these characters all appeared first in the Shady Dragon Inn supplement back in 1983.
They also appeared in the released adventure called The Quest for the Heartstone.
Now, Strongheart is your iconic, do-gooder, Dudley Do-Right paladin hero guy. In the original lore, Strongheart is a paladin and he's lawful good. Now, it says lawful good fighter. That's because paladins were a kind of fighter back in 1st edition. Anyway, he's a good fighter who aids anyone who's in need of his help. His worst enemy is Warduke. Now, years ago, the two were friends, but the Heartstone brought out their inner, strongest qualities. Strongheart, aided by Parley and Wriggle Run, escaped unharmed, but Warduke and his friends became twisted and evil. Strongheart's horse, Destrier, is a nil-rein horse, and has helped him out on several adventures.
Now, his horse Destrier is not a super original name. Destrier simply means the warhorse of a medieval knight.
And it was called a nil-rein horse. This is possibly a reference to the Moorcock Mallinbone mythos, where Elric of Mallinbone is the chief inspiration for hexblades inside D&D. Now, Strongheart's sword, Pearlblade, which has since been renamed into Steel, was given to him by some dwarves he helped. Few folk argue with this 6'2" giant clad in shimmering plate mail atop of his great white stallion. Throughout the land, his deeds have made his name stand for justice and right. Now, you can actually see Strongheart in one of the original Dungeons & Dragons cartoon series episodes.
The episode is called The Servant of Evil. Inside it, Strongheart was captured by Venger and imprisoned for years.
Right, he was basically imprisoned long enough that he could dig through a stone wall, Count of Monte Cristo style, and escape. Although the weird thing is, inside this cartoon, he wields a golden warhammer.
We're not actually sure where this comes from.
Right, maybe he won a drinking contest with Thor or something. Now, I love the nostalgia. This is super cool. I love that they're bringing back these 1980s characters because I grew up in the 80s. But let's put it all together. Let's see how they behave in combat.
Now, the game designers did something really inventive with these characters. They gave combat tips.
Right, this doesn't really happen all that often. Sometimes in the flavor text they give a little bit, but they're actually giving specific ideas on how these characters should behave in combat. So let's review them. Now, for the flavor text covering Strongheart's combat, it says, Strongheart prefers to fight with steel, his trusty sword. His favorite use of the command spell is to compel a foe to yield,
which has the same effect of commanding it to halt.
And he prefers to capture and imprison evildoers, slaying them only if they cannot be apprehended. Now, Strongheart is your classic paladin. His primary offensive stat is his strength, and his primary defensive stat is his constitution.
This is the combat profile of a melee tank.
Now, the way a tank works is they charge in and engage the bulk of the melee forces. They stay put, don't move around very much, and they hit things with their weapons.
Tanks prefer to absorb damage, either through armor class or high hit points, rather than avoiding it.
Now, Strongheart has a multi-attack. With it, he can attack with Steel, his magic longsword, 3 times. Now, Steel's a good longsword, but he's only ever going to attack with it one-handed because he's also wielding a shield at the same time. Now, besides allowing Strongheart to cast Revivify once per day, Steel has another unique ability. Once on each of his turns, Strongheart can also cause the blade to gleam with holy light. When he does so, the target of his attack is blinded until the start of Strongheart's next turn.
Now, Strongheart's going to use his multi-attack as often as he can, and when he does so, the first attack that hits, he's going to attempt to use this Glean ability and blind that target.
Now, there's no limit on this, and there's no saving throw. If you hit the creature, you can just do this.
So don't save it. Blinded is a very debilitating condition.
And on the plus side, if you use it on the first attack that hits, the whole rest of your multi-attack will be against a blinded creature, and all of your allies will be attacking a blinded creature till the start of your next turn.
Gravy.
Now, Strongheart can also cast Revivify. He's going to use this ability if any of his allies, particularly Mercion, die in combat.
Strongheart has the Protect Another reaction. With it, whenever Strongheart sees another creature attacked and is within 5 feet of them, he can use his reaction to impose disadvantage on that attack roll, provided he is carrying his shield.
Right, this is why we say he's always going to have his shield, and he's always going to attack one-handed. He needs his shield to use this ability.
This is a strong reason for his allies to stay close to Strongheart in combat.
Right, so that's pretty simple. Charge into melee combat, engage with the enemies, multi-attack them. If any of your friends die, cast Revivify. And if any of your allies get hit, use a reaction to protect another. Very simple.
But he also has spell casting.
Right, now he has some very typical paladin spells. But when you look at the list, not a lot of them have very much application inside of combat. Now, protection from good and evil might come into play if he was fighting demons or fae or something like that, but likely not if they're fighting with the player characters.
The only spell that seems to make sense for combat, and is mentioned in the combat flavor text, is Command.
Now, Command is a great spell. It can actually change the course of a combat encounter.
And it doesn't require concentration.
Now, with Command, you have a lot of options that will take place on the creature you're casting it on's turn. With Grovel, you can force an enemy to fall prone, and which would grant advantage to melee attacks against it. You could also command it to flee, which, as a result, could trigger a whole bunch of opportunity attacks if that creature was engaged with a bunch of your allies or something. Or, like the flavor text says, he could cast Yield, which is like Halt. Halt takes away not only a creature's movement, but also their action. Now, that's important. You got to remember that something that takes away your action also takes away your ability to have bonus actions. Now, this is particularly debilitating for creatures that get a lot of things out of their action. So something with multi-attack or extra attack or spellcasters.
When they lose their actions, they lose a lot.
And target-wise, if you're going to be casting the Halt command, you're going to be looking for creatures that have extra attack or multi-attack or heavy spellcasters, because it's going to really affect them. Now, Strongheart doesn't kill opponents. Anybody reduced to 0 hit points by Strongheart is considered to be unconscious and stable.
And if any of his allies are killed, he uses Steel to cast Revivify on them.
Now, Strongheart is a human. He obviously values his own life. So we are going to say he will suffer a morale failure in combat if he's reduced to 1/4 of his total hit points. When that happens, he'll run away from combat. But there's an important caveat here. If any of his allies or any innocent is still in danger, Strongheart will not flee combat.
He's much more than happy to sacrifice his life to save another.
Right, but if nobody else was in danger, he would flee combat. And that's about it. That's all the information you're going to need to get started using this character inside your Wild Beyond the Witchlight adventure.
We hope you have fun using them, as much fun as we had talking about them.
Right, they're fun, they're nostalgic. I had a really great moment when I saw that they were bringing these characters back. So hopefully you get to enjoy them. And if you're new to Dungeons & Dragons and you have no idea who these people are, you're going to have a great time.
And we hope that you tune in next time.
All right, have a good one out there. We love all you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, get vaccinated, and is it time for school yet? Have a good one.
Bye.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.